Hi, I'm Karen Badinsky, president of Moms Against Minivans. One thing is clear, we need SUV control. Every 93 seconds, someone is mowed down by an automobile in this country. Stronger SUV laws will save lives. And at Moms Against Minivans, we want to ban all assault SUVs. After all, no one needs a third row seat to take out the kids. And no matter which side of the aisle you're on, we're fighting for you. Smaller, lighter SUVs will also mean they'll be easier to stand in front of when you're blocking traffic and some idiot thinks the road is for driving, not protesting. We want SUVs you can stand in front of and stop from moving by putting your hands on the hood and pushing back with all your might. It's physics, people. So please, support the actions of Moms Against Minivans. If we just criminalized SUV ownership for people with mental health problems, liberal mothers wouldn't be a danger to themselves and others. Moms Against Minivans. Because our founding fathers intended cars to be for hunting only.
Hey, welcome to Mark Moseley Show. I'm Mark Moseley, and welcome to 1935 Nazi Germany. That's right, it's 1935, and U.S. citizens are being routinely rounded up by Trump's Gestapo. That is the narrative that you and I are being subjected to everywhere. Listen, I don't want to come on this podcast and spend the first half hour talking about ICE every week, but it seems unavoidable. These people just won't stop. Here are some examples from X. Homeland Security, ICE equals Gestapo. Gestapo hunted Jews, ICE hunts Latinos. Hitler mass deportations, Trump mass deportations. Nazi Germany chaos, violence on streets. MAGA trumps USA chaos, violence on streets. Oh, it's just a perfect match, isn't it? 1930s Germany was reeling from a bad economic situation. Hitler appealed to the population using the strategy of the big lie. Blamed immigrants and his political enemies, used the Reichstag fire to justify emergency powers, removed freedom of speech, and killed off the free press. Have those things happened? Democracy died in Germany. Trump being an idiot makes him come off as goofy, but it's all a plan that is mirroring 1930s Germany. A reminder that people kidnapped by ICE are disappeared. We don't know where, what they do to them, nor if they're alive in many cases. People, entire families with no recognized rights at the hands of ICE Gestapo who have basic immunity to do anything. What do I say when we want to defeat liberal arguments? First, allow the premise and then let it continue to its logical conclusion. So let's allow the argument. It's 1935 and Trump is Hitler and ICE is the Gestapo. Here's the hole in your argument, and it's a gaping maw. It's the Sarlacc pit of narrative holes. It's a giant freaking hole. No one who isn't white and a Republican is safe in a Nazi regime. So logically, you should be for the mass deportations. Let me say it again. If we're strictly following the history of Nazi Germany, then you should be for mass deportations. You should want as many of these marginalized groups to leave the country as quickly as possible. Why would you want anyone coming into a country that is turning into Nazi Germany? So they can just be genocided by Trump/Hitler and his SS? In fact, Mr. and Mrs. Liberal America, you are doing these people a horrible disservice by acting like you're going to protect them from the SS. You've clearly learned nothing from history, and you're going to get a bunch of people killed. Here's who should be leaving America now while they can. Don't make the mistake that the Jews and others made in 1935 when they thought Hitler would mellow. That was the thinking. Oh, surely he won't go through with any of this, or that he'd be deposed. Communists, social democrats, trade unionists, liberals, anyone seen as opposing the Nazi Party. For example, journalists, intellectuals, or former administration officials. Because immediately after 1933, thousands were arrested in the protective custody wave following the Reichstag fire. Dachau opened and initially held political prisoners. By 1935, the Enabling Act had dismantled democracy, and the Gestapo was empowered to detain without trial. The Night of the Long Knives in 1934 purged even internal rivals. Remember that. People inside the Nazi Party got... Persecution was political, not just racial, but it was lethal. Many were tortured or killed in camps, like the ethnic Roma people, described as racially inferior under Nazi eugenics. Sterilization laws in 1933 targeted them alongside the disabled. By 1935, they were increasingly classified as enemies of the race-based state. Tens of thousands fled, but many, 77,000 political prisoners died in camps by the war's end. Afro-Germans, a very small population, there were only about 25,000, but they were sterilized and excluded from society. Some fled to France. Habitual criminals, vagrants, alcoholics, prostitutes were rounded up in 1935 and sent to camps. Slavs or Poles, artists and intellectuals deemed degenerate, left-leaning creators of any kind, Jimmy Kimmel, and those that didn't leave met a horrible fate. Why not? Why didn't everyone leave? They thought Hitler would mellow. They thought he'd be deposed. So you should consider leaving now and go somewhere where it's safe and wait for Trump to either be deposed or to die and then come back to America when it's safe. I'm just taking your narrative, and if you follow the things that you claim to believe, you should be beating a hasty retreat for the nearest border, north or south, flying out, taking a ship, however you have to get out of here, take your family and flee now, because Hitler is on the rise, he's on the move, and he's going to put you in a camp. And unless you don't really believe the bull that you're spewing. Here's the police chief of Chicago to tell you, you rubes out there, that your narrative that ICE shouldn't be respected is dumb and that you're playing a dangerous game that's going to get more people killed. Check this out.
Let me make this clear. Federal agents, ICE, HSI, are officers. They are agents of law enforcement. If you box them in with vehicles, it is reasonable for them to believe that they are being ambushed and that this could end in a deadly situation. And it's reasonable for them to use force based on those conditions. Do not box in any law enforcement officer. You are breaking the law when you do that. And you are putting yourself in danger. Following law enforcement agents around. The question is why? What do you plan on doing? It's also reasonable for them to believe that you're eventually going to do harm to them. If you ram any vehicle, especially that one that contains law enforcement agents, and that's any law enforcement, local, state, federal, county, and you do this intentionally, this is considered deadly force. Deadly force is anything that can cause great bodily harm or death. When you plow into a vehicle that contains law enforcement agents, you're using deadly force. And they can use deadly force in response to stop you.
And he went viral for that. Now, I haven't followed up on him to see if he's been doxxed or fired or marginalized yet, but that is what they do. There's an infographic going around about what ICE is and is not allowed to do. Here it is on screen now. Now, all of this applies and is correct under normal circumstances. And that's the way it was shared. It was shared as being like, well, this is the hard and fast truth about what ICE is and is not allowed to do, except when you don't have normal circumstances. So I ran this infographic through an AI query, and the first answer it spit out, of course, confirmed that everything in this graphic was true. However, I pressed the AI with the query, but doesn't this all become moot, or does this not apply strictly in cases where the public, even American citizens, are impeding, interfering, harassing, or threatening ICE? Correct? Don't many of these statements become falsehoods if a blanket application doesn't take into account the fact that citizens and others are impeding or harassing or even threatening ICE? And of course, then the AI had to say, yes, you're right. If you're doing those things, then ICE is allowed to act. I first asked, is this all true? And it says, yes, the graphic outlines ICE's limits in standard immigration encounters, like vehicle stops. It assumes passive bystanders or citizens who aren't actively disrupting. It doesn't cover what happens if a citizen escalates by physically impeding an arrest, harassing agents, like the Target kid that we've seen the second half of that video everywhere. We haven't seen as much the first half of that video, where for a minute and a half, he's taunting the ICE agent, who finally is like, and now I've had enough of you, and they hustle him to the ground. Empowering people, especially immigrants and communities of color, to assert rights without fear is perfectly logical. In practice, as seen in 2025 and 2026 enforcement surges, ICE has used interference claims to justify detaining citizens, sometimes controversially. What happens if ICE is impeded by a citizen or harassed or threatened? ICE has no inherent immigration authority over confirmed U.S. citizens, but agents are protected as federal officers under laws like 18 U.S.C. Subsection 111. If a citizen does this, ICE can detain them temporarily for safety or hand them off to local or federal law enforcement, provided they're getting local law enforcement assistance and aren't being blocked by some local mayor. They can arrest them if the interference rises to a crime, a physical obstruction, assault, or a threat. Penalties can include fines or imprisonment up to 1 year for simple interference, up to 8 years if a weapon is involved, which would include a car. Some examples of impeding: physical interference, blocking agents from accessing a work site or a vehicle during a raid, harassments or threats, verbal abuse or threats that create a safety risk. For example, I'll hurt you if you touch them. This could lead to charges. ICE must have probable cause. Yelling or protesting often doesn't qualify. If you're peacefully filming from a distance, verbal questions like, do you have a warrant? Or being nearby, passively protesting, these are protected by First and Fourth Amendments and are not crimes. Being nearby is not a crime. So, yes, the things in the infographic remain true in the context of nobody's doing anything that is crossing the line. Look, if you accidentally encounter ICE, and I'm sure there are no apps that can track where ICE is, right? There are no apps out there that can tell you, oh, ICE is on your street today. But if you do accidentally run across some ICE officers, stay calm. You can assert your citizenship. You can show your ID. Film, if possible, from a distance. Don't physically interfere. If detained, demand a lawyer. Citizens can't be held indefinitely without charges. I want to help because there's a lot of people that, there's a lot of disinformation out there, obviously. So here's a list of things you shouldn't do around ICE agents. Throw things at them. Don't do that. Stand in front of their vehicle or block their vehicle in any way. Not good. Verbally abuse them. Okay. But you might catch one of them on the wrong day. You might catch a guy that's just had about enough. After all, they're not perfect. They're human beings just like the rest of us. And harassment and verbal abuse, it has an impact. Don't help anyone in the country illegally avoid ICE. Big no-no. Shouldn't do it. Please avoid at all costs. Don't use your body in any way to prevent movement by ICE. I know a lot of you out there think that if we just get 8 to 10 people standing in front of the SUV, surely 8 to 10 of us can stop it from rolling forward. It never quite works out that way, though, does it? I think somebody should produce a documentary called How Not to Get Killed by ICE. From the same people who brought you How Not to Get Killed by the Police. Aren't a lot of you who are running around screaming about how ICE are Nazis and jackbooted stormtroopers who are just completely out of control and the real criminals? Aren't you, some of you, the same people? Because this narrative, I've heard, I can't quite put my finger on it, but I think I've heard it somewhere before in the past. Aren't you some of the same people who often go around saying that police are Nazis and that they're all bad and they're all evil and they're all racist? And all of the same names that you're now calling ICE? Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You are some of the same people. Let's take a look at X. Just a couple of random examples. I asked Grok, not going to do the voice this time. I'm just not in the mood. Oh, what the hell. Maybe a little bit. As you know on this show, Grok sounds like Kronk from Emperor's New Groove. I asked X to show me some posts by social media influencers, people with decent followings, where you called cops Nazis. So here's Erica, the white trash socialist. That's how she bills herself. 50,000 X-followers. Co-founder of Left Flank Vets. Post date November 2nd, 2020. Quote, trust me, I know it sounds extreme, but like one of my literal state reps posted this. Cops in my town were exposed as literal Nazis, and threats have already been made. The context was she was directly calling the police literal Nazis because some of them were in far-right organizations. Translation Nazi. So if you're in any... Here's what the left does. Charlie Kirk was considered to be a ultra far-right extremist. See, once you label somebody something, then you can apply other labels to them because you've already established that they're an extremist, far-right nut job. So then it's just a hop, skip, and a jump from there to literal Nazi. How about Alana McLaughlin, 66,000 followers. Trans MMA fighter and activist. Okay, can't get my mind wrapped around that one. Far left influencer with ties to protest movements. Posted on October 27th, 2022. Quote, good thread. I've personally witnessed cops acting as security teams and shock troops for everyone from Proud Boys to Three Percenters, Patriot Front, and actual swastika sporting Nazis at dozens of protests since 2016. So this person, Alana, is blaming police for keeping law and order at events where you have far-right extremists. So by extrapolation, that makes the cops actual Nazis because they're enabling Nazis in this country. Here's Jane of the North, 87,000 followers. Progressive writer and activist, focused on social justice, with quotes emphasizing love and ethics. Post dated December 3rd, 2025, talking about cops. Not ICE, talking about cops. They're violent, rage-filled, racist, and stupid. They're untrained rejects from the army. They have complete power and total immunity. They are the Gestapo. Let's call them what they are, domestic terrorists, SS officers, homegrown Nazis. And we could sit here and do this all day long, all day. That's just a sample. More shenanigans from local authorities who think they have authority over the feds. Back in December, the city of St. Paul, Minnesota, sent a strongly worded letter to the acting director of ICE St. Paul field office, informing him that ICE was to cease using any city-owned parking lots to stage its raids. Can't park on city property. Oy. The city attorney reminded him that any use of a parking lot that is not for the parking of vehicles while utilizing park facilities or walking to and from lawfully parked vehicles without delay requires a permit authorized by the Department of Parks and Rec. So she wants ICE to go get a permit so that when they come to town to arrest an illegal immigrant criminal, they got to get a permit, which, trust me, that permit will never be issued. Oh, we lost your permit. Oh, we lost your request for a permit. Come on. So here is St. Paul City Council Vice President Hua Jong Kim and a video that she put out, encouraging citizens to record this unpermitted use of city parking lots.
It's not even noon and ICE has already kidnapped 5 of my neighbors. I responded to one where we believe a whole family was taken with children. There are more federal agents in Minnesota than we have of the St. Paul and Minneapolis police combined. And yet, there are neighbors that are showing up in incredible ways, like standing in front of known targeted businesses, helping escort workers home. Today, I'm kicking off one of our first mutual aid grocery runs in my neighborhood. An easy way for folks to get involved, but it's because the workers have been pulled over time and time again, attempting to make deliveries to families that are too afraid to even go grocery shopping. We're also seeing troubling trends where HSI and ICE agents are rolling into city-owned parking lots like our libraries, rec centers, and our SPPD parking lots. If you see this, please record it to the best of your ability and submit to the Ward 5 office. I'll drop the email in the comment below. See you out there.
Now, what's the latest talking point? Have you heard this one? Here's the latest. What about January 6th? We're hearing that some people that were arrested, that got pardoned by Trump, that were in prison from January 6th, got a job with ICE. A person on Facebook asked me, were you not informed about this? No, you weren't informed. You're taking Democrat speculation and running with it. Here's what's actually happening. Congressional Democrats, led by Jamie Raskin, ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, are investigating this question. They want to know, hey, guys, hey, Kristi Noem and Pam Bondi, we want records on everybody that's been hired by ICE this year because we want to make sure that no January 6 participants have been hired as ICE agents. And again, it's all speculative. But so far, it's just a talking point in search of a crisis, in search of a crime. It's a fishing expedition. But that's good enough to make it all the way around the internet 3 times before anybody actually confirms it. The Independent, because I always ask for a left-leaning website to confirm when I want to make a point, because if you quote Fox News or Breitbart, then you're just going to get shot down. The Independent, a progressive-leaning outlet, in their article titled, Democrats Want to Know If ICE is Hiring January 6 Rioters, poses the question, but here's the key excerpt from the piece from January 13th. It is unclear whether any pardoned rioters have joined ICE or Customs and Border Patrol. So no confirms of pardoned rioters being hired by ICE or Border Patrol. So it's just a fishing expedition. But again, good enough for Instagram, good enough for TikTok, good enough for Facebook. Here's another liberal talking point that I've seen this week. Trump has shortened the training period for ICE to 47 days. 47, wink, wink. And do you know why the training period for ICE agents has been shortened? Other than the need for it to double its workforce in a very short period of time? Because ICE officials, and they have repeatedly said during the 2025 hiring surge, that a significant majority of new recruits were experienced law enforcement officers. Transfers from local and state agencies, former ICE personnel, or retired officers returning, military veterans, those with prior federal service, which allowed for the streamlined validation and shorter training periods. In fact, up to 85% of new recruits are expected to have previous experience with this line of work. So they weren't just kids out off the street like coming into the police academy. These are grizzled veterans. So there's another one. There's another one of your narratives blown to hell. And Jimmy Kimmel wants us to know that Trump is a big old stupid hypocrite. On his show recently, Jimmy Kimmel spoke about how 1 minute Trump is demanding accolades for stopping wars. In the next minute, he's ordering more ICE crackdowns. Jimmy Kimmel really doesn't understand that upholding the law is a quest for peace. When you don't uphold the law, you get more lawlessness, correct? Can we all agree on that? Is that universal truth just null? Jimmy? Trump has launched military action in Venezuela, and there are protests against him in Minneapolis. The contradiction is even more evident because Trump is supporting protesters in Iran. But why is he cracking down on protesters at home? Really, Jimmy? Really? You see no difference between two things that could not be more different? And then Kimmel asked, can we put out a grease fire by throwing more grease on it? And it got a big laugh from the audience there. Yes, military operations in Venezuela to remove a brutal dictator and have celebrations in the streets is a quest for peace. And surging more agents to sanctuary cities is a quest for peace on the streets. I'm sorry that you have a bunch of Antifa-inspired left-wing nut jobs that are out there causing the chaos. When did Jimmy Kimmel become a fan of anarchy? Of disregard for the law, the rules? Here's a more precise analogy for Jimmy Kimmel than the grease fire joke. Can I walk into Jimmy Kimmel's studio during his monologue, go up on stage and interrupt him in the performance of his job? Better yet, could I drive my car onto the stage between Jimmy and the audience, blocking the audience from being able to see Jimmy with a big SUV? Could I do that and exercise my First Amendment rights, my Fourth Amendment rights, or will security hustle me out of the building?
Barney, are those new Fruity Pebbles?
Yeah, Fred, but why don't they look and taste the same?
Barney, that's because they're no longer made with red dye number 40, yellow dye number 5, and blue number 1.
Gee, Fred, is that why Bam Bam stopped accidentally bludgeoning people with his wooden club?
That's right, Barney. Red 40 and yellow 5 have been linked to hyperactivity in children, so no more Ritalin Adderall cocktail for Bam Bam.
Which only suppressed the problem until he started hearing the voices that told him to kill.
That's right, Barney. And without the blue number 1, now my daughter Pebbles doesn't have the searing daily migraines, so she stopped cutting herself and talking about taking her own life.
But gee, Fred, Fruity Pebbles still has all the sugar, right? They didn't take that away, did they, Fred?
Nope, 50% of daily sugar for a kid in just one delicious bowl.
So our children will still be among the fattest kids in the world?
Yep, new Fruity Pebbles. Now with no more artificial dyes. Part of this nutritious breakfast.
Fred, isn't that a glass of orange juice? And doesn't it contain 100% of recommended daily sugar for kids?
Don't go there, Barney. Don't go there.
Yes, get rid of the artificial food dyes made from chemicals and the high fructose corn syrup, and get rid of the complex carbs meals that are made with dozens and dozens of ingredients, a lot of them unpronounceable. Or don't. The left's reaction to Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s new inverted food pyramid has been mostly critical. Experts and progressive outlets decrying it as a step backwards from decades of nutritional science. Nutritional science that served us all so well, which is why we're all fat. Critics, including nutritionists from Stanford and NYU, argue that elevating saturated fats in red meat contradicts evidence, linking them to higher risks of heart disease, diabetes, and obesity, potentially exacerbating public health issues. But if you look at the pyramid, you got veggies up there at the top equally with the meat. So I don't really get it. The new food pyramid says, hey, eat as many veggies as you do meat. And then let's push the higher sugar content fruits down towards the bottom, and then your complex carb meals all the way down at the bottom. And that makes sense to me. That makes common sense. Because we live in a different kind of society now than when this thing was made. Progressive voices such as those in Mother Jones and Truth Out frame the changes as promoting, get this, performative masculinity. Yeah, performative masculinity. And ignoring environmental concerns like the climate impact from increased meat consumption. While vegan communities on Reddit, everybody's favorite trash heap, express outrage over the animal product focus. However, some acknowledge positives like stricter limits on ultra-processed foods, oh, thank you, and added sugars, oh, thanks. Though overall, there's a concern about implementation in schools without additional funding and a call for more evidence-based policy. Look, I think it's a net positive. We live in a free society. Feel free to Google and download the old food pyramid and stick it on your fridge and continue to eat like that. And let me know how that works out for you. If you literally look at that old food pyramid, it looks like it's designed to make you fat. It just does. And let me say, aside from the fact that the cereal companies, and yes, this is not urban legend, it's been confirmed widely, the cereal companies had a hand in the construction of the old food pyramid, which is why there's so much cereal in your diet. We have also become a more and more sedentary society. You know, what with computers in front of us all the time. We're always in front of some screen or some tablet or doom scrolling on our phones on social media to the point that we get depressed and we just want to lay in bed all day, and 1,000 different streaming services. And all of it combines to keep us sitting around or lying around and not moving like we used to. So we don't have to fill up carbs to be able to go work the fields at the family farm. Unless you live on a family farm, in which case continue to eat lots of carbs. But I don't know. Perhaps experts have some other explanation for why Americans' obesity rate went from about 15% in 1975 to almost half of all Americans today. But you don't need me to tell you that. Just go walk around at the mall and look at how many people are fat, including myself. But it must be something else besides how much we move and what we eat from this old thing from 1992. In other news, Bill and Hillary Clinton are defying Congress. They did defy Congress this week. Congress subpoenaed them to appear to talk about their pal Jeffrey Epstein. Jonathan Turley posted about this. Jonathan Turley, the famous right-leaning attorney. He said, Woody Allen famously said, 80% of success in life is just showing up. When it comes to Bill and Hillary Clinton and possible congressional contempt, it might be 100%. The two politicians have decided to defy lawful subpoenas issued by the House. For the House Oversight Committee, now is also the time for contempt proceedings. Chairman James Comer and the House Oversight Committee are investigating the Jeffrey Epstein controversy and have subpoenaed the Clintons to testify. Now, neither have been accused of criminal conduct. Bill Clinton failed to appear, and Hillary Clinton has refused to appear this week. Instead, they decided to issue a chest-thumping letter of defiance, declaring, quote, every person has to decide when they have seen or had enough and are ready to fight for this country, its principles, and its people, no matter the consequences. For us, now is that time. Oh, the phony outrage.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
The committee is likely to agree that now is the time, and the consequences are the start of contempt proceedings. The position that the Clintons are taking seems to be a repeat of the defiance of Hunter Biden, who chose to hold a press conference outside of Congress rather than appear inside for his deposition. At one time, Democrats were aghast at those who would defy congressional subpoenas. President Biden maintained that defying subpoenas cannot be tolerated. When subpoenas were issued to Republicans during the House's January 6th investigation, Biden declared, I hope that the committee goes after them and holds them accountable criminally. Leans into Mike dramatically. Two Trump associates, Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, refused to appear in the House, and Fafo, they were quickly held in contempt. He writes, now, I wrote at the time that these individuals were undeniably in contempt of Congress. Now, however, such defiance is viewed as righteous. The defiance could result in a criminal referral for the couple, prosecutions that would mirror those under the Biden administration. In fact, in 2021, Hillary Clinton mocked Steve Bannon's indictment for contempt of Congress by saying she planned for a restful weekend as he prepared for possible conviction. It is an ironic moment. The Clintons are adopting the Bannon strategy that led to his conviction. The worst thing that you could do was not appear. The best thing, at the time of Bannon's charge, I noted that all he really had to do was show up and invoke his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, which Bill and Hillary could do. But this is what the Clintons have done. And I can imagine a conversation between the two of them. Hillary, hey, Hillary, you know, Congress wants us to show up and talk about our buddy Jeffrey Epstein. I'm a little nervous. I mean, the man did have a painting in his penthouse of me wearing a blue dress. I can't really claim that I didn't know nothing.
Oh, please, Bill. These Republican panty waists, they don't have a pair between the bunch of them.
Well, I don't know now, Hillary. You mean Trump has shown them the way, man. He has taught Republicans how to reach down and grab themselves.
Bill, of all the people in D.C. who have succeeded in down and dirty guerrilla warfare, we are the grizzled veterans. We are the political equivalent of John Wick. You can't stop me. I won't go down. I'm John Rambo. I'm Sisu.
Who?
Sisu, Bill. Sisu. The 2022 Finnish film about an unstoppable one-man killing machine. It was a cult hit, and they've already made a sequel. Honestly, Bill, keep up.
But Hillary, we always say on the left, if you won't testify before Congress, you've clearly got something to hide. This makes us look like big old hypocrites.
And...
oh, that's right. I forgot for a second there, we don't have a moral compass. By the way, you really don't sound that much like Hillary. You sound more like Roseanne Barr.
I don't do a Hillary Clinton impression, so cut me some slack, Bill.
Meanwhile, Trump wants to make things more affordable. He wants to make credit card companies stop charging 25% and more. Personally, I would like the law to be changed to raise those minimum monthly payments. That's how they get you, man. Some of these credit cards, you send them $50 a month and they charge you $35 back in interest, and then you just knock $15 off your total balance. It's going to take you like 13 years to pay off that $1,000. But Trump wants the Fed to cut interest rates. He wants to make home ownership affordable again. He wants, because the trend now in home ownership is for families, they're having to pool their money, and parents and kids going in together to buy a house because people in their 20s and 30s cannot afford a home by themselves. And Trump wants, to make that a better situation. Of course, the left doesn't want any of this. They thrive when times are tough. They just do. So they want to do anything they can to slow Trump down. Notice they're against everything that he wants to do. They don't want to increase domestic oil production. They don't want tariffs. They oppose Trump putting a cap on interest rates. They don't want to cut the interest rate. Here's Liz Warren versus Liz Warren. This is a classic. Check this out.
You waited too long. And the best way you can show that you waited too long and that you get it and that you are becoming more responsive to where we are on interest rates is actually go ahead and do a nice big rate cut. Keep in mind that keeping those rates high, as he has done, keeping those interest rates so high, actually has contributed to our measure of inflation. The infrastructure that keeps this stock market strong and therefore a big part of our economy strong and therefore a big part of the world economy strong is the idea that the big pieces move independent of the politics, that somebody is making his, their, her best decisions economically and independently. If we understand that if the New York Stock Exchange, if interest rates in the United States are subject to a president who just wants to wave his magic wand, this doesn't distinguish us then from any other two-bit dictatorship around the world.
She was for it before Trump was for it, and so now she's not for it. But that's okay. Liz used to hate Big Pharma, and now she loves it. So she flops around a lot.
Then suddenly she's not your no mo.
Speaking of finances, could Mamdani help make one of my favorite towns into the new banking capital of the United States? David Sachs, an entrepreneur and investor who currently serves as the artificial intelligence and cryptocurrency czar for the Trump administration, predicted that Miami, hey, Miami, could replace New York City as the nation's financial capital. And in fact, it's already starting to happen in dribs and drabs. New York City has long been home to the country's most important banks and financial institutions, but amid a stifling business and tax environment, as well as elevated crime rates, which many believe will worsen under Mayor Mamdani, or as I call him, Slumdani, some businesses have looked to expand beyond the Big Apple. As a response to socialism, Miami will replace New York City as the finance capital, and Austin will replace San Francisco as the tech capital. That's also already happening. This was a prediction by Sachs on January 1st. Outgoing, now former Miami Mayor Francis Suarez agreed with the sentiment from the former PayPal executive. He said, quote, "We've already moved companies to Miami, either an office or a headquarters, and we've moved companies that collectively manage over $13 trillion in assets under management. Since 2020, companies like J.P. Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Blackstone, and Icon Capital Management have expanded their footprints in Miami. Citadel, the investment firm owned by Ken Griffin, moved their headquarters to Miami. Griffin previously pointed to high crime and an unfriendly business climate as motives for the transition. He said, "I lived in a failed city-state. I lived in Chicago for 30 years. I had 2 colleagues who had bullets fly through their cars. I had 25 bullet holes in front of my building where I lived. You can't live in a city awash with violent crime." I think Trump ought to just put out his own credit card. I mean, you know, he's doing everything else. Just do it. You know those other cards, they're ripping you off. They're ripping you off big time. 30%, 35%. Sometimes even more. It's disgraceful. The banks are laughing all the way to themselves. They're laughing all the way to themselves. They're buying yachts. They're laughing at you. They're making fun of you in French. But not anymore with the new Trump Gold Card. It's the greatest credit card in the history of the world. They said it couldn't be done. They said, "Donald, you cannot make a card with rates so low the banks will cry." I said, "Watch me." I said, "Watch me do it." And I did it because I win. I win bigly. And so will you with the new Trump card. Does it have rewards? Oh, we've got rewards, huge rewards, luxury perks, private gold-plated golf carts that are powered by champagne. They run on champagne. They're gold-plated. Gold-plated private jets. So much gold, they fall right out of the sky. They're not even aerodynamic. They're too heavy. Steak dinners with beautiful women or men. I don't judge. Gold toilets on the planet Mars. So many more absurd, outlandish perks that are probably not true, but I'm going to say it anyway. And the approval is lightning fast, faster than Crooked Hillary deleting emails. Faster than Sleepy Joe flopping into a beach chair. The Trump card, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and even better than sliced bread because sliced bread doesn't have my name on it, except for Trump brand sliced bread coming soon to a grocery store near you. The only sliced bread with my name toasted right into every delicious piece. But back to the card. Get it today. The Trump card, the only card... The only card in the world not owned by demonic globalists who drink blood and hate golf. Back now on Mark Moseley Show. And it's the point of the show where we take a pivot to the positive. We take a pivot to the positive. After so much darkness and so much yelling on my part, It's now time to really just kind of calm down and enjoy. Bible sales in both the UK and the US have climbed to their highest levels on record. This is the good news about the good news. Analysts point to a growing interest in faith and spirituality among Generation Z as the key driver of the trend. Well, praise the Lord. Figures reported by the Daily Mail, based on analysis of Nielsen BookScan data, show that UK Bible sales reached £6.3 million in 2025, a dramatic rise from only £2.7 million in 2019. This represents a 134% increase over the last 6 years. Between 2024 and 2025 alone, revenue from Bible sales grew by a quarter. And the same thing is happening in the United States. The sudden uptick of interest has caused booksellers and scholars to ask some profound questions of their own, seeking wisdom of their own, such as where these newly curious readers are coming from, and whether faith or just social media influencers have called them to go out and buy a Bible. Time for some more good news. You know, we live in a world that's always in a hurry, just rushing from one thing to another, heads down, our eyes on some screen, forgetting the simple power of a smile or a shared moment. But sometimes in the most ordinary places, something kind of cool happens. Picture this. A young mother and her 3 young ones, ages 4, 2, and barely 1 year old, walking down a quiet street in the UK to their local fish and chip shop. Nothing special, just lunch on a chilly day. As they step inside, they notice an elderly gentleman sitting alone at a corner table. He's 91 years old, quiet, the kind of man that's seen a lot. He's seen the decades come and go, and he probably doesn't expect much company anymore. Well, without hesitation, the kids, they looked over and they pointed, and in the purest, most innocent voices, they said, "Well, there's a seat right here. Come and sit with us." The mother smiled, inviting him to join them, and just like that, the stranger became part of the table. They talked, they laughed. He shared stories from his long life. The children shared their wide-eyed wonder at all of his stories. For 45 minutes, the fish and chips weren't just food. They were the backdrop to something a lot more nourishing. And when it came time to go, the old man insisted on paying for ice cream for the kids. He said, "You brightened my day," his voice choking just a little bit. "I wanted to brighten yours." A simple act, a shared meal, a little kindness that didn't cost a dime. In fact, they got free ice cream out of the deal. Pretty cool. Just one of the 1 million stories of kindness, love, generosity, and patience that are inspired by that book, the Bible, around the world, every moment of every day. You know, people like to talk about how the Bible has inspired so much war and so much conflict and so much suffering and so much death. And I would counter, as I always do, with right now, at this very moment, there are people who are acting in ways of love and generosity and patience and kindness and generosity. I think I said generosity twice, but okay. Inspired specifically by their relationship with God for the express purpose of glorifying God and completing the question, what is the chief end of man? To glorify God. Anyway, let's wrap up the show with our doofus of the week. In Essex, England, 40-year-old Paul Hutton has had his driver's license suspended for drunk driving at 4 miles an hour. Why was he driving 4 miles an hour? Well, that's as fast as the vehicle would go. Yes, Paul had been drinking while he worked on his daughter's car in front of his house. Her car had broken down, and she asked her dad to fix it. And when he was done fixing it, he took it out for a little test drive. But he'd been drinking. Cops spotted him driving the car near his home, and something about the situation just struck them as odd, so they gave chase. Well, they didn't give chase because he was going 4 miles an hour. But they did pull him over, and they did give him a roadside sobriety test and determined that he was double the legal limit. Normally, they would have just written him a ticket, but Paul had a previous drunk driving conviction. So even though he was only doing 4 miles an hour, he was on the street, and his license has now been suspended. If he had only stuck to driving on the sidewalk. No, I mean driving on the sidewalk. He wouldn't have gotten a DUI if he'd just driven on the sidewalk. Because you see, Paul was behind the wheel of, had squeezed his full-grown man body into his daughter's pink motorized Barbie car. You see, his daughter is 4 years old. He was fixing her Barbie car. And that's what he was driving when he was pulled over and given a DUI. We've never seen Barbie's parents, I noticed, but apparently her father's a lush. And now Ken's going to have to drive her over to the impound lot, and there's a bail lien on the Malibu Dream House, and I'd be willing her other parent is a wine mom. But, yes, Barbie's alcoholic dad sold separately. Congratulations, Paul Hutton. You are the big, stupid doofus of the week. And that's the show. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to follow me on social media at Mark Moseley. And don't forget to subscribe to the show. And please share it with a friend so we can get more. And until next time, may God bless you with peace, joy, and wisdom.